I call to order the meeting of Tuesday, March 18th. If you all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. We have Spanish translation.
Yes, we do. We have Alma Flores.
We have Spanish translation this afternoon. Hello.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Alma Flores y si necesita los servicios de un intérprete estoy disponible.
Gracias. And we have headsets for hearing impaired, as noted on the board here. Do we have any public comments this afternoon? No? Then we move on to our consent agenda. Just two items.
Move
Do
to
I-
approve the consent agenda?
Do I hear a second?
Second.
So we have Parker and Cordero. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Passes 4-0 with one absent. That is, Ms. Harder is absent today. So we move on to our action agenda. Approval of the Santa Barbara School District's independent audit report for the period ending June 30th, 2007.
Well, we were disappointed in our last meeting that Mr. Ruff couldn't be with us, but he is here today. And Eric, would you like to introduce the topic?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Sarvis. The Education Code requires that school districts have an independent financial audit performed every fiscal year. That usually entails first some preliminary work that's done by our auditors in the spring, and then after the books are closed, they take a look at our unaudited actuals, and then they become our audited actuals. They look at not only compliance issues, but also look at internal controls and look at the fiscal integrity of the district and look at other processes and procedures that the state controller prescribes in the state controller's audit guide. So Brian Ruff is here from the firm of Vavernick Trine Day and Company, and he's here to present the 2006-2007 fiscal year audit.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you for having me at this special meeting. Came up from Ontario, and it was a gorgeous drive. It's a beautiful day here, and I can understand why you love living here in Santa Barbara. My presentation this afternoon will entail three parts. First, I'd like to go over our audit process. Second, I'd like to go over the report itself. And third, I'd like to just make a couple of comments to close. Our audit process entails two parts. We come out in the spring, for this district, usually in June, so summer, and we do our internal control testing, which includes reviewing cash receipting, disbursements, payroll, information systems, as well as attendance and ASB at your school sites, as well as other site cash collections. From that audit, we will roll into the final audit in the fall of every year, and that's usually late November. And we will we'll take the district's unaudited actuals and review those balances in unaudited actuals, complete our federal and state compliance testing, and any other loose ends that we may need to tie up for issuance of our report. Leading into our report, the most notable page I would like to refer you to is page 77 of the report, if you have that in front of you. Okay. As we go through that page, it's exactly what its title indicates, the summary of auditors' results. Basically summarizes the three main areas of focus for this report and the opinions that we give to the district. The first area is regarding financial statements. That, of course, is reviewing your unaudited actuals, determining if those balances are fairly stated, and if there needs to be any adjustments to those unaudited actual balances. We did have a couple audit adjustments, one in the food service fund and one, actually two in the building fund, but they were fairly minor in nature. However, they are included in your ending balances for the audit report. This year, the most notable item to pay attention to in the financial statement opinion is that the district received an unqualified audit opinion, where in the past year, we had a qualified audit opinion due to the district not maintaining a 3% reserve combined for both districts. This year, you did make that level. However, we do note in finding number 1 in the back of the report that the elementary district was still below the 3% line. However, for reporting purposes, you still received the unqualified opinion since the board chose to go with a single district resolution a couple years ago. And we do have additional audit findings related to financial statement areas such as ASBs and internal controls within the district office. The second area is the federal compliance testing. And the district received a qualified opinion there because of one audit finding. It was a very minor exception. However, if you have any exceptions, we're required to qualify the opinion. And that finding is in the back of the report. You'll see the programs that we tested this year as well on that page. We're required to test at least 50% of the district's programs, the expenditures of the district. Lastly, the area of state compliance. Every year, the state publishes an audit guide, and that audit guide has certain elements of state compliance. This year, we had one exception. So again, just one minor exception requires a qualification of the audit opinion. Qualification means that we are deviating from the standard language that you would see in a clean opinion. And that's it. Very minor exception, but it has to be listed as qualified. In closing, this is my 3rd year of the audit, and I would say that this was the best audit that we experienced from a cooperation standpoint. I think district staff, Shirley, coordinated very well, and we had a good experience this year.
I'm sorry, could you go ahead and describe that exception?
Excuse me?
The exception? Could you
Wh-
go ahead
which
and
exception?
give us a description, the minor exception that you just noted?
For federal and state compliance?
Yes.
Okay. Towards the back of the report, you have all the audit findings, and they're labeled from 1 to 19 this year. Items number 18 and 19 on pages 88 and 89 list the 2 exceptions that we noted. The first on page 88 in relation to federal awards. We had a minor exception of $5,900 due to some payments that were made for Avid Center training. We couldn't determine that all teachers that attended that training were in that Title I program. So with the targeted assistance program, they must all be Title I teachers. With the second exception, we noted expenditure of approximately $1,100 charged for catering services in the instructional material program, simply an oversight and an obvious exception when it comes to compliance in that area.
Thank you, Mr.
You're welcome. That concludes my presentation.
Could you explain the difference between a material weakness and a significant deficiency?
That's a good question. This year, significant deficiency replaced the term reportable condition in an audit report finding. A standard audit finding typically had been called a reportable condition. This year, the Statement of Auditing Standards required us to rename that a significant deficiency. However, it did not change the level of impact that has on our opinion unit on the financial statement. A material weakness would, however, change the language in the opinion.
And the do the significant deficiencies each then lead to a finding? Is that if I,
That's correct.
okay.
That's correct.
And then the finding leads to a recommendation or you follow up on the findings
That's correct.
to see whether we've corrected them.
Absolutely.
Okay. And could you explain one other thing about, I've never fully understood auditors, the meaning for an auditor of the term sampling.
Right.
I know what it means in survey research and
Sure.
other kinds of things. But what's it mean for auditors?
Well, for an audit sample, it would be unreasonable for us to review 100%. Let's start at that level. And it would also be unreasonable to review one item. So we take a sample of items within each program and within each area that we test. That sample could be up to 60 items. It depends on auditor judgment and the level of activity within the program. And we sample those items. We'll pull documents to see if there are any deficiencies in compliance or any deficiencies in internal control processing of whatever item that we pull.
And I mean, do you actually, do random sampling or use a
It's random.
table of random numbers or?
It's random in that, from a compliance standpoint, we don't set a materiality threshold per se. We don't say anything over $10,000 we'll look at for state compliance. Obviously, as you see on those two findings, we actually picked a couple items that were below that level if we were to set a threshold, such as we do when we test for the financial statement balances, and we try to determine accuracy of the district's reported financial statement balance. At that point, we apply a materiality threshold, because if we don't, then we would run into an audit that would last months rather than the week or two that we spend on it, and alternatively also additional cost for an audit.
Well, one last question about sampling. Again, my usual encounter with sampling is that you sample because you can't measure the whole thing. You just said that.
Absolutely.
But if you sample appropriately, you can generalize within a certain
We can make
margin of error
specific comments.
to the whole thing. Now,
Not necessarily, because
are you
we,
generalizing? Are you saying on the basis of these samples that everything is fine and?
I'm telling you that we didn't find, I'm reporting what we found. So
Okay.
let's back up. With internal controls, we don't test in 06, 07 internal controls. We did what we call a walkthrough of the control system. We are not placing reliance on the internal
got you.
control
No,
system.
but what I'm getting at is, in other words, what you're reporting is what was in your sample,
That's exactly it.
nothing more.
That's correct.
Okay,
Anything that we found, we report.
gotcha. It's not generalizing from that to the whole. It's just
That's right. That's right.
intrinsically, that's what you found.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Is there any from 1 to 17 that you'd like to go over with us? Is there any that?
Well, I think I hit on the one item, the first finding. I think that's the one to pay attention to the most, although all I believe are important, so I wouldn't have put it in there if I didn't think it was important enough to list. But obviously, with number one, remaining solvent is the goal of everybody within the district.
Obviously, you go back and look at the previous year's findings too to see if they've been corrected.
That's right, it's required of us to do that.
And I had noticed, I was glad to hear what you had to say about the process this year, because I'd noticed that there were fewer findings, but I'd also noticed that more things were corrected. Some things had been sort of happening again and again and again, and I was really pleased to see the improvement in that. So thank you for sharing how it went.
You're welcome.
Although we still have problems at particular sites.
And that's not unusual for any school district. It's just a matter of keeping on those sites. Obviously, there's a lot of turnover at sites, so keeping the training going for those people that come in and fill new roles. Once it's corrected, it's not, make sure it's not left alone. It's an ongoing process, and I think the district is getting better at that as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're
We
welcome.
have a public comment, is that correct?
Not on C, well, we do have public comment, but but not on C1, not on this
Oh.
item, so
Oh, okay.
we'll
Okay.
sort of address that a little bit later, I think.
Okay. Then do I hear a motion?
Move to approve the Santa Barbara School District's independent audit report for the period ended June 30th, 2007.
Second.
So motion by Parker, second by Cordero. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? It passes 4-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
C2, approval of a side letter of agreement for the retirement incentive plan for certificated employees for 2007, 2008.
Well, we're very pleased to bring this to you as it has an effect on our layoff notices that we approved at our last meeting, or a potentially major effect on those layoff notices. To make this presentation is Dr. Robertson, our Director of Personnel Services.
Thank you, Dr. Sarvis. As Dr. Sarvis indicated, we had met to discuss about the possibility of how to offset potential layoffs and look at what potential savings we could provide to the district. And one of those is to look back at historically around 2003, 2004, we had offered another retirement incentive and had pretty good response to that incentive and turned out to be a savings to the district. But we explored that option again this year and decided to move forward and at least find out if there was interest in a particular, or in the incentive. So on February 19th, as it says here, and you should have attached to your agenda item, a copy of the survey that was sent out. And almost immediately I received back a lot of surveys. And there were just as many no's, not this year, thank you, as there were yeses, I'm definitely interested, kind of thing. And this wasn't a commitment on their part, nor a commitment on the district part to say we were definitely going to do this. We just needed to know the interest on that. So it was evident on the number we had returned that we had only asked that we have at least 25 people who were interested in order to make it worth its while. And we had double that, if not more. And I'm still receiving the surveys, even though the cutoff really isn't until Friday, but they've still been coming in as an interest. So I met with the union. We talked about the side letter of agreement, the union being Santa Barbara Teachers Association, I'm sorry. And we talked about this, and we have developed a side letter demonstrating what the offer of the incentive is. And the side letter is just strictly pending approval from the board. Okay, so we've signed it just saying, yes, we're agreeing that this is what we'd like to present, and pending your approval of this, then we'll either move forward or not. I also then attached a copy for you of the actual, what the retirement incentive says, and maybe just for the purpose of television, I can run down that a little bit. What we're looking at is the teachers must be 55 years of age or older and have been, as of July 1, and have been in the district at least 10 years or more. Eligible teachers who elect to participate will receive a $5,000 lump sum payment. The district will fully pay health medical premium for 2 years, a minimum of 2 and no more than 5 years, or until age 65, whichever occurs first. And if you're over 65, you will receive health benefits for a maximum of 2 years, where some of them are caught in between the change of the age. And the current the medical coverage would be the current HMO1 and vision plan, or whatever the current HMO plan is each year for the employee and the family. But dental is strictly for the employee. And if the retiree chooses to move out of the state of California, then they need to meet with us to sign up for the out-of-state PPO plan. And because we don't do, HMOs are not accepted at California out of state. So the PPO plan and the HMO there would be a difference between the cost of that, and the employee would pay the cost of the difference between the PPO and the HMO. So with that, I asked for their interest, and like I said, I got many of them back right away, and they're still coming in. So the side letter of agreement also depicts the exact same language that went out, with the exception of there's 2 things in contract that were added to this particular side letter, because it's already in contract, but for your purposes to know that if an employee was employed with us prior to 1982, somewhere along the line, the district negotiated with the union that these employees, upon reaching the age of 65, would receive $500 a year to apply towards their health and welfare benefits. The second one is they were employed after 1982 and had been in the district at least 10 years or more. They would receive an amount of $1,000 up until the age of 65, and at 65, that $1,000 goes away. $1,000 to be applied towards health, welfare, medical benefits. Well, in costing this out, I had to move across the page and look at who had been here all these years, what their age is, do they qualify for the 500, do they qualify for the 1,000, do they qualify for both? And there was a wide range of qualification factors here. So I kind of carried it out almost 10 years to kind of see what it would look like. So this would be exactly what would go out to the teachers. They would be a deadline. We'd have to know no later than April 16th by having a letter actually announcing their retirement effective the day of their particular school calendar. As you know, this year we have 4 school calendars, and their last day is dependent upon the site they serve on and what the last day of school is. So that's been made very clear also that those dates might differ slightly in terms of the retirement. But that will allow us then to be able to take a look at whether we're going to have many, if not more, employees who sign up for this. I am making an assumption that many employees didn't respond either way because they weren't maybe real sure that we were being serious, and so they were just kind of waiting, looking at their options, talking to STRS, doing other things. So I expect to see some other forms come in that weren't people who responded to the interest survey. But it's been a good response, and I've had a lot of questions. People called and did try to clarify things, and they felt very positive about it. They felt like it was a good move, and they were seriously considering it. And even though they've given a lot of years of service to the district, and they still think they can still give service to the district, this just was something they really seriously wanted to consider. So the other thing you have in your folder is a chart, just to kind of explain to you how we came to this approximate savings. And although it doesn't look like, gee, millions of dollars, as we carry this out over time, there is savings, and probably if we have more people sign up than who did the interest survey, then the savings will be even greater because we've already offset with a number of potential layoffs with the same number of employees that would be retiring to demonstrate that we've automatically dropped 12 employees due to just declining enrollment. So out of the 52 surveys I received, that left us with 40 retirees and 40 at the time in terms of replacement teachers that were potentially notified that they were potentially going to be laid off. So then we carried out the cost vector of their salaries, statutory benefits, health and welfare, and what the total cost was for each year carried out for those teachers who'd been here a very long time. And then the replacement, what their salaries were, we included the 3% increase for next year with compaction, although many of them would not necessarily be affected by the compaction, some will. The benefits, health and welfare again, and then we did the math work here in terms of looking at what the difference was and what the savings would be to the district in 08-09 if it would be $240,160 overall, and again could be more. And then I carried it out for the next 3 years just to kind of show you that as people drop off of the plan because of age, then savings will tend to grow. There's a slight decrease in 09-10, but that just has to do with still the number of people who are receiving the benefits and the benefits going up each year and at a 1% calculation. So this is immediately impact $260,000 is what we were anticipating with 52 potential employees who said they were interested. And in terms of what we're looking for and what we're trying to do with cost savings to the district, I think this is a viable option to be able to present to our interested staff. And I'm here to answer any questions that you might have about this.
Maybe I can just clarify one thing. The one thing that you are seeing is because of the $5,000 one-time bonus, you're taking the $260,000 one-time hit in 07-08 to achieve an ongoing savings of roughly $250,000 a year. The other thing that I think Dr. Robertson alluded to is if you run this out over the 9 or 10 years longitudinally, the savings are much bigger in the out years, but because we're focused on the current and subsequent 2 years, That's all we're showing at this point, and we didn't want to distort the picture because even though Chris could show you, it's pretty significant once you get out there and people start dropping off for a variety of reasons. Right now, we're focused on what's happening in the current and subsequent 2 years.
Thank you, Mr. Smith, because I did forget to mention the $5,000 and how that would impact, so.
Where's that 250,000?
The 260,000 is in the 0708 column, which is basically the 52 times 5,000, worst case scenario. And it's a one-time expense.
Go ahead.
Dr. Robertson, are you saying that, I was just a little unclear on your numbers in terms of, is it 52 is how many have actually returned a positive survey at this
52
point?
At the time I did these
time.
calculations, I had 52,
Uh-huh.
and so that's what we based these calculations on.
Mhm.
And as I said, I've received more since then, but,
Okay,
you know, those people who turn in the interest survey may decide they don't want to do it.
right.
And we'll have others who decide they will. So at least for the calculation purpose, this is what we've used, and we balanced it against the potential layoff numbers.
Okay.
Last meeting, I had about 5 people on our retirement notice on the personnel papers. Do those people get included as well?
Those people will be included.
So it's a bit retroactive.
Actually, didn't include them in the counts, but yes, they would, because some of them have just done it so recently prior to the incentive going out
Mhm.
that they would be included in it.
Another question is about the charter schools and how does this get offered to the teachers in the charter schools?
Cesar Chavez and Santa Barbara Charter, but not Peabody.
Not-
Peabody has already spoken with me about what the incentive was, and they were going to look at costing it out for themselves.
Any other questions?
We do have public comment on this. Mr. Lane Wheeler.
Good afternoon, and thank you. And I'd like to thank Dr. Sarvis for his leadership on this, and particularly Dr. Robertson and her staff for the great work they did in connection with Mr. Smith's work to support this. This is an opportunity that I think allows the board to think outside that box that is constraining us in terms of our revenue stream. It is an opportunity to honor people who are at the zenith of their career, and also an opportunity to reinstill vim and vigor into our classrooms with those teachers who have been in that probationary or temporary status for years and years and haven't been able to be fully inculcated into the system. And here's an opportunity now that is a win-win, and I would like you to give it your best and most deep thought and to come out with a favorable response on this. So I thank you for your time and look forward to your response.
I have a question for Dr. Robertson. Based on the number, or did the number of notices that we sent out for the March 15th notices take into consideration the number of retirees? I guess what I'm asking you is, if 52 people take advantage of this, are we going to be able to rescind 52 of those pink slips, or were some of those already taken into account when we sent out the pink slips?
Both.
Okay.
But at this point, we were looking at the numbers in terms of 40.
Mhm.
So if 52 take it or 62 take it, then there's every good potential that we'd be able to bring back all of those staff.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
What if 10 take it?
Well, I guess I'll have to talk to Mr. Smith about that and what that would look like.
Well, that's why I'm.
Because we made 25 had to be the
It seemed
threshold.
to me that any kind of contract would have to include some kind of a clause saying that it's only good if we reach a certain minimum. Otherwise, we may get stuck with having to pay out without reaping the benefit of the full calculation of the model.
Well, I can put back out in the letter that goes to the teachers that it was 25 or more to make this work. So it still would
Well-
have to have 25.
Well, that leads me to my next point. I mean, if this side letter of agreement, I don't like to encourage legal expense, but I would I would think that this is something we'd want to get some, a legal opinion on. At least I would certainly like that before I vote on it. And this is a contract, right?
It's a side letter of agreement.
Well.
And you
okay.
can call it a
An
contract,
agreement-
yes, it's a
agreement, contract
negotiated
is
item.
something we enter into in good faith, which
Correct.
is enforceable in a court of law. Is that correct?
Correct, it's a,
Okay,
it's
then I would
a contract with the
certainly
teachers, yes.
Feel more comfortable hearing from Mr. Price or someone, another lawyer, about this and kind of having it reviewed before I vote for it.
Dr. Robertson, how many other side letters of agreement do we have with our bargaining units?
Multiple over the years. I've got a book full of side letters and MOUs.
And is it typical that we would have them reviewed by an attorney before we enter into them?
Not typical, because generally the contract is usually a legal and binding document based on the state ed code and the stipulations spelled out to us from the state of California.
Is that true in this case?
This side letter would meet the same contractual obligation.
No, but I mean, but this is unique to our district, right?
And this is not the first time our district has done this exact same plan.
So this is modeled on
And
a
this-
previous one?
This is modeled on the previous ones that we did in 2002, 2003, and 2003, 2004,
Which was under Mary Dowell's
under Mary Dow.
supervision.
Is there any difference to it in any way?
No.
And if we send a cover letter with it saying that it must have, there must be 25 participants in order for this to proceed, is that, can they rescind their retirement letters if only 10 people sign up for it? That's a
I
question
certainly
for you.
would have to talk about that, but
Mhm.
I would think we could go either way on that. It really depends upon what cost factor it would be. Obviously, it needs to be something that's not going to put the district in a world of hurt, so, but saves us something, so.
I think the other thing too is that when we looked at the replacement teachers, we were very conservative in terms of estimating. You know, we didn't take the lowest rung. We took the mean average of who was being laid off, you know, with an idea of that's going to be a little bit higher than most districts would use in their calculations. So we contemplated that alongside looking at the 25%, you know, as being that threshold that we needed it for it to pencil. So I guess based on just anecdotal information, it seems like we might have more takers than less takers, but
There-
we won't know that until it's actually out there.
There was
formally.
significant demand for, I'm sorry, were you done?
I'm done.
There was significant demand for this, and we didn't bring it to you until we were sure that we would have more than enough people who would be taking this option. Significantly, the letter calls for people to turn in their letter by April 16th. And April 16th is important because it's halfway between our meeting on April 8th to consider budget cuts and our final meeting to make those cuts on the 22nd. So we will know in advance just where we stand and what amount this actually brings to the district in terms of budget cuts.
I think the other thing too is depending on who retires, that also gives us an ability to possibly strategically look at options that might not be on the table right now, which I really can't go into any more detail than that, but
Well, I wonder if we could, I mean, I think it absolutely needs a clause in there about there being a minimum, that this offer is only good if it's a minimum number is, accepts it. And then perhaps we could ask, we could vote on it, and after the vote, Mr. Price could give it a double check, and unless there's something very substantial.
The problem is, I think, that
Good, I know.
this is signed by Dr. Robertson and by the president of the SBTA. This probably needs to go out before spring break.
Yes.
We are not meeting again until April 8th.
Well, but Dr. Robinson does not have contract authority, and this is a contract, only the board can enter into contracts.
I know, but even if we make a change to it now, then it needs to go
Well, that's
back.
fine. I'm trying to suggest a procedure whereby we can, I agree, we should vote on this now. but I would like to have some assurance that that clause can be put in, that that clause is in legally appropriate language, and then it can proceed. I'm willing to vote for it. I'm willing to vote. I trust Mr. Price that he'll polish this up and make sure that it meets these requirements.
But if we make any changes to it, then the SBTA needs to respond to any changes to it.
That shouldn't be difficult. I don't, you know, I mean, Mr. Wheeler's here right now, whether he'd react off the cuff on something like that.
All of our members have contacted me in this regard. We've made it clear from the get-go that, and the letter that went out on February 19th stipulates that the district needed 25 or more participants for this proposal to go forth. Every phone call that I've gotten, I've stipulated that is part of the agreement. I don't know that we have anything in the actual side letter that stipulates the 25, but I'm not sure that that would be applicable because it's asking each member to submit their resignation predicated on the agreement in the side letter. So to me, rather than affecting the side letter itself, you have some overarching agreement that I believe I could commit to. I would need to go back to my executive board for an official recommendation, but I believe at the outset it's an overarching agreement that would not pertain to the side letter, but would pertain to the agreement in principle, and I think we have that. If there is something beyond that that you feel uncomfortable with, I'm certainly I could get more confirmation from my board to make that agreement. But because the side letter specifically states that this person is resigning on this date, effective this date, I don't know that we can pin that to 24 other people doing a like agreement. But we have said from the outset that it has to have a minimum of 25 to go. I'm not an attorney, so I don't want to comment beyond that, but I certainly answer other questions.
If I may, how about if the first sentence said, the Santa Barbara school districts are providing the following retirement incentive for 25 or more certificated staff for the 2007-2008 school year?
And that would be in the side letters where you're asking for that?
The first sentence of the side letter.
I don't want to advise the board on what to do. If you put that in there, I'd certainly take it back and substantiate that or bring it back to you as quickly as possible. Once again, I don't see this being the issue. We've had well in excess of that number of people. We've made it clear from the get-go, so I don't really think this is a stumbling block.
With all due respect, Mr. Wheeler, you're the other party to the contract, and I respect your opinion, but you're not our lawyer.
I certainly am not, and certainly not trying to prescribe to be. I'm certainly saying that I cannot give you a 100% assurity that my organization would accept that. It's an obligation that I need to take back to the executive board and bring back their opinion on that. And once again, in consultation with our California Teachers Association staff. Once again, I feel like we've got the language that we need, but if you believe you need more, go ahead and put it in and we'll work with it.
Can that be done quite quickly for you to meet with your executive board and talk about it?
Describe quickly.
Okay. Dr. Noel, would you be comfortable with putting in for 25 or more certificated staff?
I'm more comfortable, certainly.
On the side letter?
Then I will make a motion to approve the side letter of agreement for the retirement incentive plan for certificated employees for 2007-2008 with the addition of the words 25 or more in the first sentence after the word for and before the word certificated.
Second.
Can I ask a couple questions here? Last year, how many retirements did we have without an incentive?
12,
And the year before that?
about the same number, 14, I believe.
So 25 is not that many more than what we normally have.
No. And the last time we offered the incentive, we had 68.
This seems to me unnecessary, but, and it certainly does slow it down.
What I haven't shown you is I have a letter prepared to go based on however you decided that says 25 or more in the letter that's going out.
So it seems unnecessary, but I guess we
Well,
have a
and
vote.
or we could, Mrs. Parker, we could incorporate the letter. Again, I'm not a lawyer, but I read that language all the time. This is hereby incorporated in this agreement.
Well, since we haven't seen the letter, I don't know for sure. And I am, like you, I would be just a little concerned that our bases are not completely covered if we don't agree.
Yeah, it's a
that it needs to
contract.
be 25 or more.
Well, let's hope, I guess we need to have a vote.
Yes. So we have a motion and a second. Ms. Cordero, you look like you're about to say something.
I sort of with you. I'm not convinced that we need this language in here because from what I'm hearing, everybody has progressed through this entire process under the assumption that we're talking about 25 or more. It's in the letter. And everybody knows that that's what it's been based on, and I'm reluctant to slow the process down.
But it doesn't sound like it would be terribly slowed. But my concern is if something dramatic happens and only 13 turn in their retirement letters, but they have this side letter in effect, then I don't see us having any protection against them saying we need, you need to go ahead with this and give us our $5,000 stipend and medical, et cetera. And I absolutely agree with you. It's highly unlikely that would happen, but I think that we should protect ourselves just in case.
Dr. Robertson, do you want to say something to that? No.
I'd like to cite, you had us read all the old board policies and all the new board policies. Let me refer you to existing board policy 33-112 with respect to contracts. All contracts shall be submitted to the legal advisor of the districts for review and approval. Just happened to flash through my memory. That's our existing board policy.
Okay, well, we have
And this is the same letter we submitted for legal review and approval.
So, I mean, I think Dr. Sarvis also has a point. The only thing that's changed, I think, is the date.
It is.
Yeah.
And usually throughout anything in terms of what I do with negotiated items, which I have been authorized by the board to at least do that, and to sign potential side letters or MOUs pending your approval, was to, we work with our lawyers and our attorneys throughout this. And this has been, like I said, not the first time we've done this. In fact, we've done it several times. And even in, 25 or more in the letter just says we'd look at it in terms of going forward with an interest if we had 25 or more interested in the survey. So I understand what you're saying. And again, I can stipulate it in the letter. But pending when he has an executive board meeting and what they say.
Well, let's call the question on this and then see where we go from there.
Okay, so this may, in fact, delay it and make it not go out before spring break if we do this.
Absolutely.
And it means it'll come out later, and the April date may have to change.
It will.
And then we're not going to know in time. I just want to
Correct.
keep that clear. Okay, so it was motion by Parker, seconded by Noel. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
No. Okay, so we need a new, does not pass. 2-2. It's,
Well, I would argue that each contract is a contract, and that past contracts are just that, past contracts, and that this is a contract, and it stands on its own. And approval of past contracts by our attorney does not necessarily imply approval of this contract, and that under our board policies, we are obliged to seek review and approval by our attorney.
could be seen
So
both ways.
My motion is to refer this to Mr. Price for an opinion.
Do I hear a second? No. Do I hear another motion?
I'd like to move the approval of the side letter of agreement for the retirement incentive plan for certificate employees for 2007, 2008.
And I'll second that. I think that the other way is the better way, but I want this to go forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So it's motion by Cordero, second by Parker. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
opposed, and I'd like the record to show at least I've expressed the view that the board has just now decided to violate one of its own policies.
It depends on how you read that, though. because-
Excuse me, Dr.
That's my-
Sarvis.
My
Okay,
view.
That's your view, yes.
I just called Mr. Price. He's on his way.
Well, that was kind of you, but the board has already voted. Thank you.
Thanks. So it was, I'm sorry, I didn't read out the result. It was 3-1. Cordero, Parker, Malakoff in favor, Noel opposed, and Harder not here.
I'd also like the record to show that I really support the program, but I was not able to vote that way.
Okay, we are on to the conference agenda, and we have D1, which was something that I put on the on here, is discussion and possible revision of board focus goals to determine and prioritize 2008-2009 goals and objectives. And I'd like for everyone to go to D1 and look at the reason I brought this up is the timeline, which is on the last page of our board packet here, last 2 pages. And notice that it says, it originally said March 25th, that we would determine and prioritize 0809 goals and objectives for the district. And I had, at that meeting, changed the motion to take out the 25th so that we had more flexibility and could be any time during March. As a president, putting this on the agenda, I had a few little problems there in that I wasn't sure. To me, board goals mean the list that we have at the beginning of this, which is our goals that we've been working, that we last worked on in May 2006. But maybe this is a question more for Mr. Smith, but I wasn't sure whether that is really what we need right now to determine our cuts, or whether we need more specific objectives to talk about the cuts. Because if it is something along the lines of our usual focus goals, a more appropriate time when we have more time and energy to give to this might be in the spring, when we often do this. So I am here asking, as a board president, I'm asking the board for their direction on how to deal with this. Ms. Parker.
For me, when I was looking at the budget development calendar, when I saw determine and prioritize the 0809 goals and objectives for the district, that to me is about the goals and objective, tying your budget to your focus goals, but much more specific to the budget. They all need to be integrated. And in an ideal world, we're actually discussing this long before March in terms of our focus goals. I mean, really, that should be a spring, summer, fall project, and then you have that all in place. It's not something that you can really rush through. And especially with Mrs. Harder absent, I'm reluctant to have much of a conversation about it because everything that we say colors our opinions. And I know that my feelings change based on what my fellow board members are saying.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think we have focus goals that are still quite relevant. I know that there are things that I would change about them now, but I think that may be a conversation for later. I don't know how.
Ms. Cordero.
Well, this brings up the concern that I've had about wanting to establish a budget committee, and I know we have that for a future agenda item, or future agenda, but because my concern is always that we tend to be in a position where our budget drives our goals rather than our goals driving our budget. And so, given where we are now, I see sort of the reality of maybe, from a practical application, how we have to move forward. But I would like us to be in a position where we have these, because we have this set of goals, but they are not prioritized. These are not in priority order. So when it talks about determining and prioritizing the goals and objectives, we don't have a priority list from last year, the year before, that we are operating under. We're operating under this set of goals, but given that we have to start making decisions, and I would like to be able to make our decisions based on our goals, we have not identified priority for these. And that concerns me as we go forward with our further budget discussions, that we will again be having those discussions from the point of view of our fiscal situation, rather from the point of view of our pedagogical and sort of more
Bigger picture.
encompassing
Bigger picture.
goals. So, that said, I'm not sure from a practical standpoint how we can tackle that and still adhere to the timeline that we need to adhere to for the development of our budget. But I would like us to maybe have some opportunity to discuss that, whether it's at the March 25th meeting, which seems,
April 8th.
or the April 8th.
To go
25th
back.
is spring break, so that's why we're not having March.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. Okay, so our April 8th meeting, whether we can have some of that discussion. And I realize that that's
That's
you know,
way,
putting
yeah,
it at,
it's a,
you know,
and it's a
at
lot
the
of-
wire.
and it's a lot of things for that meeting. I mean, we have a full meeting as it is, so. I mean,
Without any of that discussion, what are we
How do we
going to
proceed?
base our decisions on?
That's, I guess, where I'm stuck. Also, I mean, the other part of this that should even come before this is the mission statement. And that was originally, we were going to do a mission statement and then do the goals, and then we would have objectives. But now we are,
Well, what we could do is work with our existing goals this go-around, and as we talk about the budget at the April 8th meeting, we could first preface that conversation with a discussion with the existing goals. How would we prioritize these, and how do they need to relate to each other and to the budget? That would just be my suggestion. I don't know if you have one, Dr. Noel?
Well, I would ask that maybe I know this may be asking a lot of the staff, but I don't think we're going to be able to get into a position of saying we think support I'm trying to think of a particular program, you know, that this English class is more important than that social science class, or, I mean, I don't think we're going to be able to get into that level of prioritization. What I do think we could do is look at some larger categories, something like we did with the Measure V funds, where we kind of categorize them as things that were in our top priority, types of projects that would be in our top priority, types of projects that would be in our second tier priority.
well, I think the staff is preparing that in terms of budget cuts, that there will be lists and there will be priorities attached to that.
Well,
Am I correct in that?
will those priorities be in any way
No.
connect or
They're not
correlated
currently-
to our goals?
No, they're not currently prioritized. Well, just as an example, there's been much discussion about music, whether we retain elementary music. The way we're proposing that we show elementary music right now is that it leverages other funding. None of the board members, no one on staff, public, parents, have suggested that at the elementary level, we even cut elementary music, that we just show it as leveraging funding. We do have additional electives at the junior high level. That is on the list, but there's no prioritization of that as compared to others, nor is there any reference here to music. So it would be difficult to say, well, that's tied directly to 1B, and therefore it's number so-and-so on the list. So that's really coming forward as an overall list, and the only sequence on that list right now is, so which of those items bring us the most money, which of those items bring us the least, and that's
Well-
just about it. I mean, it was intended to be a completely open list so that the board would have ultimate discretion and considerable latitude about the cuts that you thought we needed to make.
What I would like to see is, I don't want staff to set the priorities. What I would like, though, is for staff to identify categories, in the categories that we could prioritize. So, for example, if we said, okay, a top priority to maintain would be programs that leverage additional funding. and you could maybe identify which ones are those. Okay. Programs that that are statutorily required. Obviously, those are going to be high priority to maintain. List, you know, and I don't mean for every program that we have. I mean for any of the things that we're looking at that are on our list, to find categories that we could say, okay, this is, you know, singleton classes, or you know, electives that have some connection to the core program, or, I mean, just sort of general, because otherwise I think we're going to, and I'm not even 100% certain that that's the best way to do it. I'm just concerned about having a discussion where we're looking at each item in isolation and trying to prioritize it relative to every other thing that's on the list, rather than sort of a more overarching priority.
Except that $4 million in cuts is not a lot of prioritizing. It's a lot of putting it on that side. It's not, there aren't going to be a lot of things that we have a choice over. That's my gut feeling. But can I ask Mr.
So you're,
Smith,
I'm sorry, I just want to clarify what you're saying.
that we're not going to have
That
lots of
you-
choices?
That you think most of the things on the list are probably going to have to go.
Yes,
Okay.
unfortunately. Can I ask Mr. Smith?
I don't know that that's necessarily true. I mean, maybe most, but just as an example, the board just moved on an item today. We won't know what the actual cost savings is until April 16th on that. And we will bring that forward. We'll show it as a tentative on April 8th, but we won't know until the 16th.
May I be recognized? at some
Oh,
point?
yeah.
No,
Can
I can wait.
Oh, yeah, I didn't see you.
my hand, and I
I
wanted to
didn't
make
see
sure
it.
you did.
Mr. Smith, do you have a suggestion for how, since you wrote that on there to begin with, on how we would do this, or?
Well, I just wanted to address one board member Cordero's comments, is that we, as part of the list, have also looked at items that we've considered, but they've been discarded because, one, they leverage other funds. Two, they're suggestions that aren't legal. Three, they're negotiable. And so we're trying to make it as transparent as possible that even though these suggestions came in, this is the reason they can't go forward, you know, without placing any kind of value judgment on them, other, you know, that they're not legal, they're negotiable, they're whatever the case may be. So that'll be inclusive in the plan as well.
I think this conversation is kind of floating. Setting priorities and looking at objects is a circular and iterative process. It's not a clean one thing. First priorities, now we will make a deductive connection to expenditures and so on. Doesn't work that way. You need to see what the possibilities are before you can say, but that doesn't fit a priority. That's how you set your priority. For example, one trade-off would be to close a school versus cutting some programs. Until you say close the school, and I know there's a timeline, but we're working with a long-term problem here. Until you say close the school, you don't have on your list of, how do I prioritize that compared to the loss of these other things? So it seems to me that we need to see the list. You don't have to. We wouldn't hold you to this is the final word. This is a list to start a process, to start thinking, so that we can then look and say, yeah, but I don't know. I don't think that should be cut. I think this should be cut. That is a statement that reflects a priority. So you arrive at the priority by looking at the concrete suggestions. And I think we should proceed that way and save ourselves a lot of wheel spinning about kind of abstract notions of priorities disconnected with anything real.
Ms. Parker, did you have anything? Oh, you just
No,
threw it.
I'm
but-
just doing my public comments.
I think that's where I was sort of getting to, was that I put this on here for discussion because I wanted to say we talked about it. But I also had kind of problems. I don't really want to go through the goals right now, although they do need to be worked on. And I think we all agree on that. But we will come back to those. We're going to do the mission statement. So does that sound like a plan for us? So we're going to do the mission statement. We're going to do the goals in the spring. And we're not so much going to have objectives right now, but we're going to keep these goals that we have in mind when we talk about cuts, and we will have those at our next meeting. We do have public comment. Go ahead.
Mrs. Adams, do you want to speak on this? Followed by Marion Asdrell.
Hi, I'm Denise Adams. I'm a parent, and I would like to reaffirm what Ms. Cordero said. The public's very concerned about how the board makes decisions and what comes first. I was here when you set a lot of your goals and objectives. I notice you keep your mission statement behind your head, and we read it. And there is a lot of concern about, again, how decisions are made, and like Dr. Noel says, how you're going to accomplish your mission. For many in the public, it starts with you, Ms. Swatsky, at the elementary level, and you spend a lot of time and a lot of money doing cleanup when they get to the secondary level. And if we focus more on the elementary schools and doing what needs to be done to get the kids started in the right direction, which is one of the reasons I know people have stated that they supported Kate Parker, because she came in with that focus on the younger students. And if we do have a consolidated board, and getting kids started off right is very important, that's a goal. And we know how you start kids off right. If you go to the schools who are your high-performing schools in Santa Barbara, and by a show of hands, Dr. Brian McCabe did this at Cold Spring School, there was not one hand that didn't go up when he asked who has music instruction. It either happens at school or it happens privately. I bet you could duplicate that same question at Montecito Union in the Hope District and the Goleta District, where you get a lot of your high-performing students, and they'll raise their hand. We believe, and the students from Music Students United, they're talking to people and asking people that if you start them off right, you could save a lot of money. And back to your expenditures for non-instructional services, I would take a very hard look, because I think the district's on a very slippery slope. And I think your teacher morale's at an all-time low. I can't imagine being a teacher and working for you, thinking I have permanent status, thinking I have a union that will help me. And the union's concerned more about raises than they are, in my opinion, and in my conversations with them, about the teachers and the students. These teachers, when they get permanent status, they enter into mortgages and leases. We want to keep our good teachers. When you go around and talk on the street, people are very happy that you finally hired someone like Mr. Smith. We hope you give him a department of people who really study and understand the budget. We hope you'll listen to Davis Hayden. Look at the outcomes. We've got the information. We live in this microcosm where you could study and track students. Who are your high performers? Who are successful? There's a formula. We watched your show, Closing the Achievement Gap. We want the gap closed. We know you have a big challenge, and I saw that red light go off, and I know my time's up. But the job can be done, and it can be done cost effectively, and we're glad that Mr. Smith's on board. And we're glad that we have someone to do research and development, and UCSB's offered to provide you free interns. Look at what the outcomes are, track our kids, and let's do what needs to be done so we're not into this remedial, correct a bad problem. We want every student to be successful. Just like I argue at my school, we need foreign language and we need this. You know, it's not an unlimited pot of money, but short of getting kids' buses over to City College, and I know my son had to start at City College at 6th grade, and you're cut
Thank
from
you.
the 7-period day
Thank
to the 6-period day, it's hurting these kids and it's hurting our community. So if we can't offer it through Santa Barbara City Schools, I hope we get some buses over to City College.
Thank you, Ms. Adams.
Marion Asdrell, followed by Kieran Dunn.
Good afternoon. My name is Marion Asdrell. I run a theater program called Showstoppers. But I don't think that's enough. I don't think after-school programs in any way are a change-off for credentialed teachers giving curriculum-based lessons to students. It is not the same thing. I'm happy. I love what I do. I think it's important for kids to have those opportunities to perform and learn, but they are not. They are not an exchange for you. Your children need music, theater, performing arts, fine arts in school. They need to belong to their communities. They need to be part of their communities. I'm sorry, I'm extremely emotional about this. My children went through Santa Barbara School District. My grandchildren are there now. Other grandchildren are on the way. We just look at all this. My children, my grandchildren now all get private. They go to showstoppers. They go to outside activities. They get private music lessons. But they're upper middle class people. They can afford it. You're looking at the elementary school kids coming in now who don't have those opportunities. And even if their parents could afford tuition, even if the programs are free, they still have to get there after school. So it's not even necessarily about money. I mean, there's scholarships available. People are offering you after-school programs. It's not the same. It just simply is not the same as you providing it for your elementary school children so that they can achieve the academic excellence which your school district expects you to provide. So I lend my voice to not just maintaining the status quo, but for increasing music and performing arts and fine arts in your school. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Astro.
Kieran Dunn, followed by Jason Nunn.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kieran Dunn. I am a senior at Dos Pueblos High School and a member of the First Robotics team and a member of the Instrumental Music program. I'm here this afternoon to encourage you to place music in our public schools as one of your highest priority for upcoming school years, and perhaps in the present. Instrumental music and performing arts in general offer so many opportunities to students who participate in them. There have been numerous studies that prove that music increases a student's capability to produce good work and academic excellence. I know for a fact that instrumental music programs in this school district have produced students who've attended high-performing schools such as UCLA, UCSB, and UC Berkeley, and UC San Diego. But aside from just raw academic success, there's so many opportunities offered to students. I know for a fact that students who are involved in the Dos Pueblos Jazz Band have the opportunity to go to numerous festivals and to perform at paying gigs. So it's what you could say, in addition to benefiting their academic excellence, it's also somewhat of a vocational education as well. There is widespread support for instrumental music in this community. Music Students United has recently circulated numerous petitions, and in the course of about a week, there have been roughly around 600 signatures collected. So there's a fair amount of public support. And so students who participate in instrumental music see other opportunities out there, and they take the skills and discipline that they learn in an instrumental music program and apply it to other opportunities such as Econ Challenge or First Robotics for that matter. Numerous students are involved in those sort of things, academic decathlon, and sports as well. It's also a very culturally diverse environment. In Dos Pueblos, I know for a fact, there are people who hail from Korea, China, France, and numerous places across the United States, and they all come together to learn how to cooperate and produce a beautiful product of a concert or a performance. I look at your mission statement on the wall, and we see that numerous of those, music fulfills numerous numbers of those goals. It helps achieve academic excellence in students, higher test scores, and that sort of thing. Numerous students come together as well, as I said before, from different backgrounds. They learn to work together, diversity. And there's a responsibility with being part of a large band or color guard or a dance team. And they learn to take responsibility for that and balance their own interests with this civic duty to their team. And they also must take responsibility for their own learning and development. They have to learn how to practice. They have to learn how to pull from within themselves a beautiful product. And I'm the son of a former school board trustee, and I know how difficult it is to get some of these policies across. But as board members, you must find within yourself a way to reach this ultimate goal of the school board, which is students who are academically excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dutton.
It's Jason Nam, followed by, and I'm sorry, it's difficult to read the last name. It's Kristen, maybe Cawthorn?
Good afternoon. I'm Jason Nam. I'm band director at La Colina Junior High School and San Marcos High School. And I decided to come up and speak today, and not necessarily to reiterate the information you've already been given as far as the benefits of music, because I already know that you've heard that many times. And myself, as a product of both the schools that I actually teach at, as a product of the music program, I can attest to the benefits. But mainly, I'm here to talk a little bit to you as a music educator, trying to communicate to all of you the importance of sequential instruction in my particular discipline of teaching, and basically to get across that it, like any other discipline, it's necessary to have sequential learning, and it's just so important for the survival of our school music programs. I realize and recognize the fiscal crisis that we are, as a district, are facing, and I realize that you are the ones that have to ultimately make these hard decisions related to cuts. However, it is my hope that you take into consideration the fact that the livelihood of school music programs depend on sequential instruction, and this means appropriate step-by-step curriculum, just like any other discipline like math, English. I guess I could liken it to if you're going to go and teach algebra to junior high kids before you've even taught them addition and subtraction. Music is the same. There's a step-by-step curriculum that needs to be followed. And this is the reason why a lot of people are quite passionate about this goal as far as keeping music in the schools, because they know that this system has to be in place in order for these kids to be successful. And of course, you know the benefits that result if students have an outlet, creative outlets such as music in the schools. And I am in complete agreement with what Ms. Cordero and Dr. Noel mentioned before in relation to examining your decisions as a board as far as whether or not the budget is driving our decisions or our goals driving our decisions, or just sort of examining both sides of the coin with that. And I just wanted to also reiterate that if programs are cut or reduced at any level, it provides a huge constraint on all those concerned, K through 12 in music. So you're not only affecting particular teachers at each school site, but you're affecting every music teacher in the district. If you cut a elementary program or a junior high program, that will ultimately affect the high school. And all these teachers are connected, and like I said, I do realize you are making these hard decisions, but I implore you to take all this in consideration when discussing reductions in programs and try to stay as far away from classrooms as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nam.
Kristen, I think Cawthorn, followed by
Ms. Malkoff?
Yes.
I'm wondering, because I'm not suggesting that we limit comment, because I think we should hear from all the people who want to make the public comment, but I do think we should probably point out that this is really not on the, not addressing the agenda item, and that we are taking this really, I think this was, most of these comments were probably intended for public comment.
It's loosely in that it's about, we were
Board
talking
priorities.
about priorities, so I'm going to let it go, and we'll just finish up. Oh, I think we just have two more, but.
No, I definitely think we should hear the speakers. I just thought maybe we should
Let me add to
identify it
that,
as
though.
something else.
There were 3 students who came in and they said they were here to talk about the budget cuts, and I told them that we were not agendized to talk about the budget cuts. And now that we've had comments about the importance of music, I'm sure they would have said, made some very strong statements about the importance of music as priorities, and I'm sorry that I told them that it wasn't on the agenda. So first of all, I apologize for doing that, but I think it's also important for everyone to know that we are agendized to talk about budget cuts on April 8th. The meeting starts at 6 o'clock. It's not at 7 o'clock. It starts at 6 o'clock. And that is the point at which we will go directly into our discussion about budget cuts.
I might comment that a 3:30 meeting is very hard for students to meet, to be here, and I noticed that students came in a little late for public comments, and I share our chairperson's broad interpretation. It's just too bad those folks left.
Okay, my name's Kristen Cawthorn. I'm here today to ask the school district to, like other people who have just spoken, solidify their commitment to music instruction, and thus to the overall development of the intellect that is your mission. I'm a parent of an 8th grader who's benefited all his life from music inside and outside the Santa Barbara area public schools. However, I'm here today on behalf not of him, but of 28 scientists and environmental planners that I work with who eagerly signed this petition that was put out by the students. I literally put this out in our break room one morning at 10, and an hour later I came back and the first page was filled, and pretty much everybody else signed it too, it seems. I look here and I see 7 of our most senior project managers. I see 3 chemical engineers, 3 biologists, 6 geologists, 5 GIS specialists, 5 planners, 6 administrators, and marketing specialists. It just kind of crossed the gamut of everyone. A lot of these people don't have kids. They're just simply responding to the need for education, really good education that'll develop not just tell kids what to think, but to help them develop how to learn, how to think, how to face challenges. I think music is a fundamental tool for education because it is so beneficial in so many ways, and because it is so indirect. I know that you all think a lot of, and teachers widely recognize that students really learn how to think and what to think. They learn most effectively when they're having fun and they're intrigued and it can be somewhat indirect. I think about my 2-year-old who, when he had listened to elaborate Tom Chapin songs since he was 3 months old. We'd been indoctrinating him with these folk songs with elaborate language and stories and vocabulary. And at 2, he was singing along to them. And, you know, I think that not only was he learning vocabulary, sentence structure, storytelling, he got intriguing images of the rainforests and lakes and cities and geographies and different cultures. You know, none of this would be also, you know, learning by memory, to memorize. None of this would go into him at the age of 2 unless it was being brought using poetry, the rhymes, the melodies, the evocative feelings from the music itself. So that was just a huge experience for me to see how music can help educate, help kids really learn. And I think that as I've seen him, I'll just wrap this up quickly. As I've seen him grow now into an 8th grader, I've realized the focusing challenges and skills that he's learned, and the memorization skills that he's learned and through music have always helped him out. And I think with school, you know, and I think sitting kids down and telling them, you know, training them to take a standardized test will never work, even by the measure of the standardized test. They learn so much through music, and I think it's underutilized as a tool.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. And I wanted to give you
thank you.
this.
Yes, please, just bring it. We'll pass around.
And finally, we have Rhonda Spiegel.
Hi, my name is Rhonda Spiegel, and I am the parent of two seniors. Both are at Santa Barbara High. And I am not going to talk to you about all the benefits of music, because there are a lot of people who have already and will at future meetings, I'm sure, list for you all of the statistics and the data. And I have two children who support that. They both have either been playing a musical instrument or singing since 5th grade. And do I think that they are the children who they are, competitive for Ivy League schools, et cetera, because of music? Yes. But what point I would like to make, my career has been as an executive in healthcare. And in that role, as you know, healthcare being the business it is, I think I spent maybe 20 of the 30 years looking at budget cuts. How do we downsize? Which programs do we get rid of? How do we prioritize so that we keep the important stuff? And I know from colleagues over the years that when we received impassioned pleas from employees, from department directors, there was a tendency to look at an all or nothing. I'm certain parents will come here and tell you that they have to have everything. Every class, in every school, during school hours, after school programs, and in an ideal world, I support that 110%. However, what I ask of you is when you're holding that red pen and you're going to cross out whatever you think you can cross out, when you get to music, ask yourselves, how can we keep music in the schools for our kids, and not with a broad stroke make it all disappear. It is important, and you are the only ones who can figure out which line items have to go, and it's a very, very challenging and difficult decision to make, and I respect that. Just make certain you really look deeply and creatively at how can we keep what our kids need in this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Spiegel. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, well, we're going to move on to D2. I think it goes without saying that the board would prefer not to make cuts. That's not our first choice, and I guess we have to just say that over and over again. That's not what we want to do. It's imposed upon us. D2, the first reading of revised board policy on business and non-instructional operations, or the 3000 series. We started this already, and we are on what page?
Page 45. Sounds like a game show, doesn't it?
I wish it was that fun. Oh, my whole notebook just opened up.
I have 2 words that I would like to suggest.
Yes?
Before I leave, so actually, he picked exactly the page that I have 5.
Okay.
At the very top, whenever, am I on the right page? Contract.
Yes, whenever state.
State law invests the Board of Education with the power to enter into contracts on behalf of blah, 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 enter into and/or renew.
We will ask Mr. Price about that.
Which, at the very top is what you're saying that?
First sentence.
Very top.
Okay.
Into.
Well, I don't think that's a legal question. I think that's a policy question. personally.
Okay, any other comments? How do we do this? I'm sorry, my whole notebook just fell apart here, sorry.
If I could go back, I know it's going back to another era, page 33. I'd love to put my 2 cents worth in for.
Have we already adopted those, or I can't remember if we've adopted anything yet.
No,
Okay,
We're
okay.
still just
We're just looking at them, okay.
Yeah, it was just and it was only the first reading anyways.
All
Okay.
purchase,
We changed those numbers, if that's what you're asking.
This is BP 3310, go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 3/4 of the way down. All purchase orders of purchase of other items or more, $10,000. That's an increase from 5,000 in the old policy. I would be really comfortable with that if we were in such a strict budget situation, and I would suggest that we stay with the 5,000.
Is that in fact a change? or-
Yeah, that's in fact a change, and I would,
sorry,
that is a change from the 5,000. I don't think from a control perspective, it has much to do with an issue in terms of exceeding the budget. Where it does have an issue is, right now we have a timeliness issue with respect to how fast we can process a purchase order because we don't have online requisitioning. So what will happen is that we'll end up having 2 purchase orders or requisition issued in the amount of $5,000 each, as opposed to a 10,000. I mean, I understand there should be a limitation, and I think 10,000 is appropriate given that the $5,000 threshold was probably set 20 some years ago. So that's my 2 cents. But
The paragraph down, the next one down is the one I cared about, and that has to do with board approval.
okay.
And I guess what I'm trying to say is that, you know, it's, that under the present budget circumstances, the board needs to step up, make those approvals, and therefore be accountable. And, yeah, the difference between 5 and 10,000, just right now.
Is that the page
I
that's,
settled for 7,500.
is that the page that's in our packet that says over $5,000? And it
Right,
lists
and
those
so what's
things?
happened now is that anything above $5,000 comes to the board. This would raise it to anything above $10,000 for things that were considered, you know, materials and supplies. I think the other change we suggested is that $69,000 figure is adjusted for inflation each year by the superintendent of public instruction, and I think we inserted some verbiage there that said something to that effect, because otherwise you're going to be changing it every year based.
I think I would prefer to see us maybe adopt some sort of resolution or maybe even policy that would allow us to implement a sort of an emergency spending limit or something that we could invoke in times when we think we're in this sort of emergency budget kind of climate. That wouldn't necessarily change the policy, but would allow us to suspend that policy maybe.
It would go like hand in hand with a budget freeze or
Yeah.
something like that.
That's a good
Right.
idea.
That's a good idea.
Okay.
How would that be worded?
Could you put that up for?
Why don't we craft language to insert
Right
probably an additional paragraph that might suspend this in the event of a budget freeze?
Perfect.
Excellent.
Let me ask you this, Mr. Smith, on the same one. Is this prior board approval?
Prior board
We often get the purchase orders long after it's happened.
Yeah, I think what you looked at here that's one of the issues we're having in terms of timeliness of purchase orders. But generally, the nomenclature is ratification is after the fact and approval is prior. So I think I saw some language that said approval and or ratification, and one of the other things we were just looking at.
I saw that language too, but I can't remember where.
Well, here, I don't know, but here it says it has approval in the first sentence of that last paragraph and ratification for items under 10,000 in the last.
Right, so
Which is
ratification
exactly
would
what-
be exactly right. Those items that were
Anything that's under the threshold is all.
always going to be a ratification unless we invoke the spending freeze provision.
Okay.
That's
So-
correct.
So in other words, as it stands now, if this policy is adopted, if it's $10,001, it has to come from prior board approval.
That's correct.
That helps clarify. Is that clear in the language?
Mm-hmm. I think so.
So we're moving now back to page 45, unless there's anything else.
Sorry.
Okay.
Can I make one blanket suggestion?
Yes.
Could we change the title of Assistant Sup of Business to Deputy Superintendent of Business throughout all the documents?
Throughout all documents,
All right.
find and replace. Sounds
Find and
good.
replace, yes. On page 45, there's a bunch of these effective July 1st, 2007, and obviously we don't need those because we're now after that date, so those could be, there's a whole bunch of those that could be eliminated. That's right in the middle of the page. Okay, anything else on 46 or page 47, 48 or 49? Um, 50, I had something on 50, but, page 50, I don't know what I'm talking about here, so.
I did notice that 51 appears to be a duplicate of 50.
Ah.
So that should be pulled out whenever it's finalized.
I said didn't know anything about, okay. 52, 53, or 54 or 55. And Mr. Smith, feel free to stop us if there's something you wanted to talk about here. 56, 57, 58, 59, 60. A lot of this we have no control over here. 61, 62, and 63. 64 and 65. Maybe I should let somebody else tell me when to stop. Here are 66 and 67. I have nothing for a while here. 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77. 78. 79, 80, 81.
Back to 79, just very
Please,
briefly.
yes. Yeah, I had something here too, but auditors or something about that.
I just wondered if those numbers are still appropriate, if all those amounts are still an appropriate amount. I was looking at this and I'm not sure exactly when the last time was that it was revised. The only date I see is related to 1995, but I
This
don't
is-
know.
This is a current policy as recommended by CSBA.
Okay, so these numbers are still appropriate.
These numbers are
Okay.
current. I don't know whether they're
Okay.
appropriate, though.
They're appropriate. They're
Okay.
actually
Okay.
prescribed by GASB 34, which when we had to go to a more rigorous standard for fixed asset and inventory control, that's how it was prescribed by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board.
We actually do a physical inventory every 2 years?
Well, we're supposed to. I can't tell you whether we're doing it or not.
We put
That's
someone in
not-
place at the warehouse to assign inventory numbers so that we could.
The other thing too is if you move back to page 74, I just want the board to be aware of this because it was something I was looking for, where that section is entitled Management of District Assets and Accounts, but if you read through it, it really sets out the policies with regard to investigating fraud and control. So I just want the board to be aware that that's there because a lot of time auditors will come and ask you have a fraud policy. Well, in my mind, it's embedded in that policy there.
Okay. 79 then was okay, and 80 and 81.
Just making policy on the run, aren't we?
Yeah, on 82,
Actually, we should say that plenty of time has gone into these in advance. People have gone through these a couple of times, and they're really before you and should be in fairly final form unless you have questions about them. I'm sorry.
And especially some of these ones we've been going through quickly are so embedded in statutory regulation that we have little discretion
Control.
over how they
Simply a
get-
repetition of ed code.
Right.
on page 82, we do have a no candy policy. Do we need that in here somewhere for fundraising events?
Well, we do have the wellness policy, and that regulates
So that,
what.
That's
on
separate.
top of this,
Yes.
okay. It does say, shall consider the effects of the activities on student health and safety. I just thought maybe we needed to put nutrition in there as
Shall
well.
we refer to the wellness policy?
Maybe.
Yeah,
Maybe
maybe we
not
can say
reference.
Some of
see
other-
wellness policy.
Well, there is
Yeah.
a student, I don't know, 50/30 student wellness. I'm not, I don't know what the number is for the wellness policy. What was in the 4,000?
Oh, there it is,
We
50/30.
could make
is-
it more explicit as part of that paragraph.
Sure.
Okay. Okay, 84, 85, 86, 87.
I had one comment with respect to 84. I just didn't catch this the first time. I think it would provide more clarity if, I think it's the it's the fourth paragraph with the board shall regularly communicate the district's financial position to the public and shall use financial reports. I'd like to say financial reports and multi-year projections. to determine what actions and budget amendments, if any, are needed to ensure the district's financial stability.
Okay. 85 or 86, 87, auditing, and 88, 89, 90. We're into energy and water management, 91, 92, 93, 94, I just want to note this air conditioning thermostat shall be set no lower than 78. Does our staff, do people know this? Do we have a way of enforcing this, or? Yeah? Yeah, okay, okay. I don't know if it makes any sense to have something where we say if the air conditioning is on, they should shut the door. Shut the windows. I don't know how many places I've been in where the door and the windows are all open, the air conditioning's on. And the heater.
We could add that to G, with doors shut.
With door, please, and windows. Yeah. Okay, keep going. 94, 95, 96. Waste management, 97. 98. There's wonderful goals in here. Boy, these are amazing goals. 99.
I just had a quick question on 99. The district shall provide comparable basic equipment and supplies for all classes. What exactly does that mean?
Means paper, textbooks.
So it's school supplies?
Well, let's see. Let me go to specifically to equipment.
Where is this, the statement that you're looking at? The middle one?
The second paragraph.
The district shall provide.
I'm not exactly sure what that means. Maybe Mr. Hetyank can address what that means.
Comparable basic equipment.
To me, it would mean that we provide parity to all of our schools.
Mhm.
That we furnish required equipment and that there be parity between the schools, where one school doesn't get a Yugo and one a Cadillac of a certain piece of equipment.
Okay, thank you.
So there's some minimum standard.
Yes.
And it's shared, I like that statement, shared within and among the schools.
If I could also clarify on that point, the Williams further stipulates that, for example, in lab equipment, all schools must be properly equipped and to a degree of equity. So there's many settlements that affect that particular provision, and it's all about equity.
Since the Ed Code reference is on Title I programs, it probably has most to do with instructional materials.
Okay. 100, 101, 100 and, yeah? Okay, 102 about the cellular phone reimbursement. Okay. 103, 104.
Okay, I had a question about 104.
Tobacco.
In paragraph 3, it specifically says that this applies to all employees, students, visitors, et cetera, et cetera. But then in paragraph 4, it specifically says that the school will not permit the use by students. And I'm wondering why the distinction of students in paragraph 4 when paragraph 3 has said specifically everybody.
I'm sure that's simply the Ed Code reference and a recitation of the Ed Code reference, which does refer to students. But if you'll look at the next one down, the last one, smoking or use of any tobacco-related products and disposal of tobacco-related waste are prohibited within 25 feet of any playground.
The part that I was looking at was the part that in paragraph 4 that specifically says, while attending school-sponsored activities or while under the supervision or control of school district employees, and
So if they're
I
on a
guess
field
I'm
trip.
thinking that if they were on a field trip or something, this could be read to say that it's okay for the employees or other chaperones, et cetera, to be smoking, but not for the students. And I would want to maintain that while people are on a field trip or other things, that if they're overseeing the students, that they shouldn't be smoking.
Okay.
Could we go to the one above it, however? The prohibition against tobacco applies to all employees, students, and visitors at any instructional program, activity, extracurricular event, or athletic event.
Mm-hmm.
It almost seems like
And
that
that's-
paragraph is unnecessary. It says no school shall, should we just eliminate?
I was confused by paragraph 4 because it seems to contradict what paragraph 3 says.
Well, it's just, it like narrows it suddenly when it didn't.
Well, it's in Ed Code. We wouldn't be eliminating it, but if it helps the clarity, and we just say no tobacco for anyone, regardless of whether it's an instructional activity, an extracurricular activity, or an athletic event, and just stop at that, then I think it does help clarity.
Or add to it, it's school-sponsored activities.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. 106, 107, 108.
A lot of these bring up the same question. That is, when we're communicating with the parents and the community, we don't specifically identify that those communications will be in the parents' language, and I'm wondering if we ought to. There's one, I think I'm not sure where it is, that says it'll be in language and format that is easy for parents and guardians to understand. That's much later in one of them. But, for example, here where we're communicating.
On which page?
Well, on page 106, where it says information about the district's tobacco-free school policy and enforcement procedures shall be communicated clearly to employees, parents, guardians, students, and the community. And
All this information already is translated, right? I mean, the parent packets come home, this information's in it, and it's in Spanish and
We could
English.
specify here in English and in Spanish, and that'd be better than in the child's home
Yes.
language,
Yes,
since we
because
have
that could-
46 languages
yes,
in the district.
that would be useful.
And I assume the signs are also in Spanish.
Well, that's what I was wondering, because some of them didn't stipulate that the signs would be in both languages as well.
I don't know
The
if-
tobacco use?
Well, the same issue runs throughout a lot of these upcoming policies.
Mr. Hedgehog, do you know if the signs are in English and Spanish? So maybe we can just add that in here, too.
If I could make one comment, I don't have the Ed Code citation here with me to bring to your attention, but there is an education code requirement plus other statutes within California that requires all communications to parents when they constitute 15% or more, that it be sent in the home language. And so probably simply stipulating Spanish is not appropriate. The language should very clearly be in the language of the home. And I haven't had a chance to look through the entire policy to see if that particular citation is in there, but I know it must be in our board policies.
We have the ability to search for that, so
Yeah.
let's do search for that.
Let's look, because I'd hate to say in the home language and then that'd be taken to the extreme. So it needs to have the wording about it being 15% or more of the school's population or the district's population.
Okay. Anything else there, or 108, 109, we're into lead and asbestos, 110, 111? Yes?
On page 109, indoor air quality. Item number 2 states, indoor painting of school buildings shall be limited to those times when school is not in session. I'd like to request that we change that to be at those times when the area is not occupied. If we're going to not paint any interior part of any school while school's in sessions, we're going to fall behind. We typically, if an area has extra classrooms or an office is vacant and requires painting, we go in and paint, but not when anybody's in the room.
Okay.
An example is we're painting some rooms right now at La Cumbra that the academy is going to be moving into. The area is not occupied, but school is in session.
Thank you. 110, 111, 112, 113 is hazardous substances, 114, 115. We have, on 116, we have our own pesticide guidelines. I assume that it kind of works in relation to this. 117.
Correct. And as part of that, on page 117, paragraph labeled number 8, the second paragraph, the Integrated Pest Management IPM, and instead of that committee, that should say coordinator may establish a committee. Instead of committee, may establish a committee. And what that does is it changes our IPM committee from a board-appointed committee to an advisory committee, which means we don't have to worry about violating the Brown Act.
On page 118, this was another area where it talked about posting, warning signs, et cetera. All of those places where posting of signage is statutorily required, do we always post it in Spanish and in English?
We always post in Spanish and English, and the notices that go out are in
Okay.
Spanish and English.
120, we had some discussions about campus security. Signs are at, that if we were to, it's kind of interesting that if we do use cameras, that we have to post signs. It's interesting.
Well, they're more effective when signs are posted.
Well, we do have cameras in use at some schools on occasion, and do we, just want to point that out then.
Good, thank you.
23, 24.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
On page 123, I'd like to add some verbiage on the keys
Yeah.
up on the screen.
Ooh. Is this
Okay.
directed, this is directed at the city of Santa Barbara staff or at?
Well, we
staff?
don't say in our current policy, there's nothing to prohibit district employees to give keys to non-district employees. Friends who may want to use a field or open a gate. It's a way of controlling keys, and also classroom and building keys. Our civic center permit, we have a venue where if someone's leasing a space, they pay a custodial overtime for them to open and close. We don't want to give keys away
So
and lose control of them.
how would you have paragraphs 4 begin?
Well, may I suggest that in our AR, our related AR, on page 122, number 4 is control access to keys and other school inventory. And I believe that these procedures specifically for Santa Barbara Parks and Recreation, for example, ought to be spelled out here, because these are our operational guidelines. And perhaps, Dave, correct me if
Yep.
I'm wrong, but perhaps that'd be an appropriate place to put this in.
Sure. And currently, we do have employees sign for the keys at the $35 and $20 rate. However, the form which they sign has an incorrect board policy number. And so this will put the correct policy number on the form they sign,
Yeah.
and the dollar amount will be in board policy.
You know, on page 123, we have a section that's marked keys, and it has more of the explicit information about how we operate to control keys. And for instance, it says keys shall be used only by authorized employees and shall never be loaned to students. The
That's where I
master
was
key shall
proposing
not
this
be-
language.
Yeah.
That's where he had.
Oh, that's where you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I was back on.
You were
okay.
back on number 4. Don't put
Well,
it there. Put it down.
let's,
But maybe
w-
that should-
Let us figure out how we can insert
Yeah.
that onto
Yeah.
this page, and we'll show it to you as, we'll show you the others. We show these to you then as
Yeah.
changes to what you've just seen.
Yeah, I was just changing paragraph 3 to these 3 paragraphs, and then adding the actual costs under paragraph 4.
You're way ahead of me, Dave.
Okay. 24 and 25, 26 and 127, 128 and 129, 130, we're up to sex offender notification on 131, 132. I had a question on 133, whether we had to deal with any kind of policy, what happens when a parent is a sex offender? Do we need a policy, or is there a policy in those cases?
Well, we've had that situation before, and we just treat them as a sex offender regardless.
Do we have to notify other parents?
May I suggest that before we proceed, that this should be a question that we give to council?
Okay.
There's a lot of controversy about this particular issue and many more restrictions than we're led to believe, and so I'd rather
Okay,
have council weigh in.
great. 134, 135, 136, 137. Now we're into emergency preparedness, 138, 139, 140, 141, 142.
Okay, 142 is that statement that I read earlier, development of methods to ensure that communication is practicable in a language and format that is easy for parents, guardians to understand. And so I wanted to make sure that that meant not just in, that we were using
Simple English.
simple language, English, yeah, that,
Yes.
but that we were actually using the appropriate language for the parent.
I'm sorry, I don't see that.
I'm sorry, it's on page 140,
It's
are you, 142, item C? Item
Thank you,
C.
Thank you.
It says in a language, so,
Mhm.
but it's not clear what the language means. Yeah, you're right.
Mhm.
What that means. Okay, can I move on? 144, 145, 146, 147. Do we on 147, do we drop procedures shall be practiced at least once every year, every school quarter in elementary school, and at least once every semester in secondary schools? Do we actually, the middle of 147, under 2, do we practice drop procedures? I just don't know.
Our schools currently exceed those requirements.
Excellent, okay. 148, learn things doing this. 149, I had a question about whether we have as part of search and rescue teams, but I guess we've seen all this in our safety, so I'm gonna just keep moving on. 150, 151, 152 and 53, 154, 155, 56, 57. Please stop me if I'm 58, 59, 60, 61, 62. I'm sorry, I got something on 63, if you'll give me a second here.
I had something on 162.
Okay, you look at 62 while I figure out.
Oh, well, I was just questioning the sentence. In lieu of, for me, for 162, at the last paragraph, it says, in lieu of providing transportation in whole or in part, the district may pay the student's parents, guardians, either their actual and necessary expenses in transporting the student, period.
Or,
And so I was wondering what the or was there, if there's something missing. So
Thank you.
Or
that's just a
not.
question.
or not.
Or not.
There's guidelines on the top of the next page on 163, and I've never seen this before, so I'm just asking.
And this was a big question for me too, because shall be eligible, and first of all, it says for students attending a 3-year junior high, and of course, we currently only have 2-year junior highs,
Right.
so I don't know if that can, if
Yeah.
this is.
I think this needs to be
This is
relooked.
relooked at.
altogether.
Okay.
And I mean, we would be paying for a lot of kids to go to high school in particular,
Yeah.
and elementary and junior high. So, and I also don't think it's true.
Yeah.
So,
No, we'll make those corrections.
Okay, 164, 165, 166, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71.
on 70,
Driver's instructions.
on the driver's instruction, at the bottom where it says, in case of emergency, keep all students together and call 911 in the district office. Could we also, on this driver's instructions form, have the district office phone number?
Okay, good idea. 171, 172, 73. I'm not stopping till we get to the end here. 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, we're into nutrition, 82, 83, 84. Boy, it's total 85. 175 calories, whatever this is. Interesting, okay.
I know that we just went past the transportation policies. I don't, well, I didn't see our bus pass policy. And
Ah.
that should be an AR in this.
Yes.
Did I just miss it?
No, I don't think it's
I don't
there,
think it's in
so
there.
that would be included in
Something to-
terms of
yes,
the-
And
both
that's
the bus
something that
pass policy and the.
We're busy enforcing right now, so.
And we don't have anything to enforce in here, so we need to kind of work on it.
Well, I'm wondering if maybe it's in another area. But I
don't-
certainly want it to be in our codes and not some standalone memo or standalone guideline someplace. I mean, I think it's very useful to have these things all in one place.
This makes sense,
Thank you for catching that.
yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's a good idea. Okay, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, we're operating the cafeteria. 90, 91, 92, 93, this is free and reduced, we don't have much control over. 94, 95, 90.
I just want to comment on 195. On number 4, the students shall not be required to use a separate dining area, go through a separate serving line or entrance, or consume their meals or milk at a different time. And while that obviously there's no requirement at our secondary schools, that is sort of in effect happening because we have students that are not free and reduced, almost all tend to go to that à la carte line. Students that are free and reduced have to go to the full meal line. And I know that our new director of nutrition services is working on that in terms of being able to integrate both à la carte and the full meal. But it's something that we really need to pay attention to.
Well-
Interesting.
Well noted.
Yeah.
Mhm.
196 and 197, 98, 99, 200, 201, 202, 203, and this is also a lot about our wellness policy, 204, 205, which it does refer to, 206, 207, 208, 209, records, 210, 211, 12, 13.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm going too
That's-
fast.
No, I just wanted to go back to 207. We're under restrictions. I may have misunderstood what was happening here, but on number 3 on 207, A says the item, one only, must be approved by the board. And I didn't understand what the one only meant. What are we saying?
What are we talking about?
Yeah, I didn't quite get that.
I thought that it meant that if you're an elementary school student council and you decide you want to have a fundraiser that involves selling food at school, then you need to know that as opposed to the junior highs and high schools where maybe you could decide you're going to sell popcorn and cup of noodle, at the elementary you can only do one, and that item needs to come to the board for your student council fundraiser.
Okay, because I thought it could easily be construed to mean that you could sell more than one, but only one of them had to be approved by the board.
Or should it just say the item
item.
must be approved by the board?
Yes.
There can be no more than 4 sales per school year? Did
Well,
we,
keep in mind that this is only for the
Food.
student organizations
Mm-hmm.
during the school day. So
Oh.
they could sell all they want after school.
oh, okay. 208, 209, 210, 211, 212. We're on to consultants, 13. And 14. Yay! Are we do we need to stop, or is anyone willing to do?
I'm willing to do 7,000. It's quite short.
I have a question. I apologize because it goes all the way back to item 25. And so I wanted to wait, page 25. So I wanted to wait until we got to the end of this one to go back to that. And it may not even be how, I may be reading it incorrectly, so it may not be an issue, but it's on lease, or sale, lease, rental, and of district-owned real property. And the second paragraph says, the first sentence of the second paragraph, upon determination that district property is no longer needed or may not be needed until some future time, the board shall offer to sell or lease. And I was wondering, that seems to say that we must offer to sell or lease it.
I believe that refers to a designation on the part of the board that this is a surplus property, and then we offer it up for sale, but I'd rather have it say
May. Okay.
But I think you're right. I think that once you've made a determination to surplus something, then basically you've opened the door. You've opened the door to sell or lease. Whether you're actually compelled to do it, who actually knows? But it's safer not to declare it surplus until that's your intent to do one or the other.
Excuse me, Dr. Sarvis, that may want to remain shall if that is the way it's listed in the ed code.
Yes.
And then the way around it is just not declare it surplus.
Yeah,
Okay,
I think we probably need to introduce it then in that way.
Okay.
Because I'm sure that this is ed code language. We'll
Okay.
double check to see whether shall is ed code language. If it is, then we'll put it in context.
Okay.
You know, one of the things you might do too is flip those paragraphs where it says, when required by law, the board shall appoint a district advisory committee to make the recommendations regarding surplusing, so it precedes the other paragraph, because right now they're kind of out of order sequentially.
That makes sense. Yeah, anything else going backwards? Going forwards? Or is everyone all right with that? Okay, we're on page 1 of the 7,000 series. 2 or 3 or 4, 5, 6, 7. I was just kind of curious that at the bottom, we have to notify the city council or county board of supervisors. I can't imagine why we have to do that, but okay. But we do. Okay. 8 or 9, 10 or 11, 12 or 13, 14 or 15, 16, I have something on 17 maybe, can we? No. Oh, charter stuff. You have something.
I went nuts on the
Yeah, I have a few things here too. Okay. Go ahead.
My biggest issue with the charter, with page 17 in AR 7160, is that throughout all of our policies, we refer to ourselves as the districts, even though we are an elementary district and a secondary district. But this is one case where I think it's really important for us to make it clear that when we're talking about charter schools, we're chartering in either one district or the other, but not both at the same time. My proposal was for, in the first sentence, and let me see if I can read my writing here because I scribbled it in. In district students are those charter school students who are entitled to attend a district elementary school in the case of an elementary charter, or a district secondary school, or a district secondary school in the case of a secondary charter, or in the case of a charter sponsored by the high school district.
What happens to like the Santa Barbara charter school, which has it's
Yeah,
in
they
the elementary
have
school, but it has a
two-
7th and 8th grade?
They have two separate charters.
Do they?
Yeah.
They have two separate charters. That's
Okay.
right. And we tried to collapse the charters and weren't successful in doing that.
And then,
I'm trying to grasp the complete ramifications of what you're saying. If it's an elementary school, if it's an elementary charter, the students have to be eligible to attend school in our elementary district.
exactly. So in other words, you may live in Goleta and be eligible to attend one of our secondary schools, but if you're in 5th grade, then you are not eligible to attend an elementary school. But if you just say districts, then there could be some confusion. You say, I am under.
Yeah.
But they can, in fact, apply to go to the charter school, but as
course, but
as a transfer.
As a transfer.
That's all she's-
They're no longer an in-district student. And then throughout the whole time, every time it says,
So the 80 is in-district students, has to be 80 in-district elementary students.
an eligible charter school operating in, then I would say in either the elementary or the high school district is one that is currently providing public education to, it says just to in-district students, but was it meant to be 80 in-district students?
It's 80 in district students,
Okay,
that's
so-
right. Where would you put that?
Sorry, if you're going back to the beginning of paragraph 2, then a new change would be an eligible charter school operating in, instead of in the district, it would be operating in either the elementary or the high school district. It's the high school district.
No,
Is-
it's the secondary district.
No, it's called the Santa Barbara High School District.
Oh.
Is one that is either currently providing public education to 80, so there's, insert that 80 there, 80 in-district students, or has identified at least 80 in-district students. And whether or not, blah, 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 so regardless of whether the, and then hopefully, once you have that set in the first 2 paragraphs, you don't have to keep
Yes.
referencing.
So after 80, it would say,
It would say 80 in-district students,
oh, okay, in district students.
or has identified at least 80 in-district students.
Because in-district students has been defined in paragraph
Right,
1.
as either elementary or high
To
school.
80. Oh, very good. Thank you. Yeah, I modified it just a little. In the first case, I put in-district students are those charter school students who are entitled to attend a school in the elementary district if the charter is in the elementary district, or a school in the high school district if the charter is in the high school district.
If it's in or if it's sponsored by.
Sponsored by?
That would be
Okay.
my question. Or chartered by.
Is
Chartered by,
chartered by?
yeah.
Thank you. Good.
And then for me, on page 18, the next page, I just wasn't sure. I know that there have been changes to the, some of the Prop 39
Yes,
requirements.
there have been changes.
And so I
For
wasn't sure
instance,
if that needs to be updated a little bit.
The date of notification needs to be updated, just as an example. I just happen to know that one because I've got a request for facilities that we did not honor. We will go back to our charter attorney on this.
That's it for me. I don't know if my colleagues have anything.
Just some questions.
Dr. Malakoff?
Yes.
On page 20, if I can suggest some additional language.
Okay. Go ahead.
I'm looking at the next to the last paragraph under facilities and furnishings, and then after the last sentence, I'd like to add a sentence that says, a facility use agreement between the district and the charter school shall outline the location of the facilities, those authorized to perform maintenance, alterations, additions, or deletions to the facilities, and those responsible for custodial and grounds functions. None of our charters have quite the same structure and same agreements with us as to who's going to be doing maintenance and grounds, and that makes it clear that all these things will be worked out in the facility use agreement.
We can insert Dave's language.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep, thank you. Okay, keep moving on. 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, there isn't much here, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30 and 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, we're on to general obligation bonds, 37, 38, 39, oh my gosh, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, there's nothing on some of these pages. 44, I love this, we ended with a naming of facility. Anybody want to comment on that? Otherwise, we are
Well,
done. Yep.
I didn't want to break the flow, and I probably should have, but Nancy
Well-
Harder had sent us both an email asking that we take a look at, oh, that was back on the 3000s.
Uh-oh.
Gosh,
Oh, we can go back. Can we go back?
Well, yeah, sure.
I'm sorry. Back in the 3000s, on page 73. She simply asked the question, since we have classroom expenses, whether we should have an whether we should have an accompanying administrative regulation for this.
Yeah.
Doesn't the last paragraph say that we're going to?
Yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah.
think about that.
It says we're going to. So I guess we should.
And on page 78,
There's nothing on 78.
the end of the regs, items 4 and 5, indicate that various public and private agencies that we will work with, but no mention is made of student and staff.
I wonder what number is that supposed to be?
Investing, or is it the next one?
Let me
How
guess that it's a different page then.
Maybe.
Here, hang on. I'll go by her policy number, which is 3511.1.
3, that's way later.
35.
1.
Maybe it's 88.
No, it's 1 something, 1.
35 what?
Back in the 90s.
Oh, 3511.
3511.1.
Okay, so it's 98. 98.
96?
98.
It's page 98.
3511.1, and she asked about the AR, so it would be a 98.
Mhm.
Good. So at the end of the regs, you see 5 items here.
Work with the
City, county.
Yes.
To
in-
locate markets for the district's reusable and recyclable materials.
And what did she think we should add?
She said that we indicate various public and private agencies that we will work with, but no mention is made of the students and staff. And she suggests the number 6, which would be, quote, work with staff and students to educate them on why it is important to reduce waste and how to accomplish waste reduction.
Okay. Or to reuse some of the materials, they could also reuse materials.
That would be waste reduction, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's fine.
Yep.
Okay, and one more. Board Policy 3550.
Who can find it first?
Oh. It's back there.
355.
182, 183, 180, 181?
Well, is it the BP or the
Okay, good. 184 is 355, oh, I'm sorry, that's the AR. Well.
Wait, AR is which one? I
Board-
mean, are we looking at the AR or the BP?
Well, actually, we were looking at BP, 181.
181?
And her question was, for these board policies, this one right up through 3554, do these coordinate and integrate our new wellness policy? And I have already written that question on these. In fact, I saw a date on one of them when we were talking about sales, competitive food sales, and the updated date was January 2004. Well, I know that we've approved policies since then, so I wanted us to go back and take a look.
Okay. That's it?
Good, thank you.
All right, so we don't have anything to go back to, and our next regularly scheduled board meeting is Tuesday, April 8th, probably starting a little earlier. And that, unless any, than usual. We may not, the idea is to have the public session start at
We'll probably have
6.
closed session at 5 or 5:30.
Okay,
So that we
so-
can start in open session at 6 o'clock.
Okay. Meetings.
oh,
Take that back, what?
Board, under upcoming items.
No, don't have any upcoming items.
Oh, we don't have any.
We don't have anything.
Okay, I'll email you.
Okay, I did, that was adjournment then.
Good.
It's like, no.